this biopic does something very interesting. That's something that we love. It does not tell the full life of Enzo Ferrari, but rather depicts a few months of 1957. It pinpoints probably the most pivotal moment of Enzo Ferrari's career, right? As running Ferrari, as basically a coach of his racing team. And it dives into him as a symbol of national pride, but also personally is going through a lot of struggles, complicated family life. Ricky Flex, what do you think of this decision to only pinpoint in 1957?
So smart. And he picked the perfect time period. If you had to pick any time between Enzo Ferrari's life, could have easily been a biopic covering his whole life, like we saw in Napoleon, where it's like the beginning of his life as a racer, and then you get into him starting Ferrari, and then you can get into this, then you can get into the Ford Ferrari type of thing going on, then the end of his life. Like you could have done easily a biopic, and it probably would have been like Napoleon, just basically a narrative plot going to one year to the next year. But this is like just a character study really into this one year, this pivotal point, like you said. And I think it really captured who Ferrari is as a person. Like I said, a character study and everyone that's important in his life. And honestly, when his back's against the wall, and it's like interesting as well because it's post World War II Italy, and you have all these other like factors going in. You have Maserati here, you have the business going bankrupt, Ferrari and the family issues. You have so many interesting plot points to work with. And I think Michael Mann does a pretty good job incorporating all of them into one. And you can kind of see with the performance, kind of capturing it all as well. So I think it's one of the best performances of the year. I think it's one of the best movies of the year. I'm very happily surprised. It pretty much met my expectations. And and honestly, like this is how you should do it. You know, this is how you should do it. Pick one year, pick one a couple months, whatever, pivotal points, stuff with the most interesting things to work with, and then you make a movie out of it. You don't try to cover everything. I think this is how you do it.
I thought amazing decision, and you couldn't have picked a more pivotal moment of his career. You talked about the external factors with um, with Ferrari at the center of it all. I thought you didn't need the build up to his career. I felt like because of the performance of Driver, I knew who Ferrari was, right? A dominant force, right? Confident, right? Someone might tell him one thing, but he knows his decision is final. And I thought he had some amazing sequences here. Him one on one with Penelope Cruz, who plays his wife Laura in this movie. I thought he had some amazing sequences with him as a coach, with him and uh, his appetite to win and to be the best. And with his back against the wall, how confident he remained, I thought it was amazing. And it's one of my favorite performances of the year. And then I was shocked to see like how important he was as a figure in Italy. Are you talking about post-war Italy, not in great shape at this time, and how much fans looked to him. And in this type of movie, you usually get people admiring the racers or like performances focused on the racers and what's going on the track. But this one, you have some really exciting racing sequences, but I just can't take my eyes off Adam Driver. Like he's the one I want to see operate here. And I thought the writing was excellent, trying to build into how important he was as a symbol of Italian pride. You have him in the barbershop meeting up with the soccer coach, the local soccer coach. And you think Europe, you think how important the sport of football is to these people. But when it comes to what is the pride of Italy, it's racing. It's F1. It's what Enzo Ferrari represents rather than this soccer coach. And I think that told you everything in terms of importance. And you have people in church with stopwatches measuring right the Maserati times, like how important the race culture is during this time. I found it very educational. It was very informative for me. I had no idea, but basically, I thought this is really good writing for the most part. My flaws with the movie are more about some of the castings that go on and some of the cartoonish type of moments that happen on the racetrack. But pretty much everything off of it and anything centered around Driver, I thought was spectacular. And without those two elements that I brought up, those two flaws, this is an Oscar contender. This is a Best Picture contender. Um, but we'll get to those flaws later. Uh, any other thoughts on Driver here?
But Driver, yeah. I think a big thing that we see in Hollywood is that it's like with racing movies or sports movies in general, the star is he's the driver, he's the racer, he's gonna be the one hitting the home run at the end. But like you said, this is not about the driver. This or not pun intended. Like the like it is about the driver, Adam Driver, but it's not about the guy who's gonna cross the finish line and by a millisecond over the competitor. This is about the guy behind the scenes, and I think it's a really impactful or really impressive for Adam Driver where these racing scenes are going on, and I think the scenery is beautiful. The sound is fantastic. I think that's a lock for an Academy Award nomination, the sound of this movie. But what you're really focused on is Driver during the race. Like, you're not focused on the actual racers. You're focused on him constantly negotiating with everyone, on the phone with Fiat, the constant power struggle with his wife. He's also battling grief with his dead son.
Yeah.
Also with his, like, it's again throughout the movie they kind of hint at, oh, he had two friends that died this week that were race car drivers. He's constantly battling grief while also trying to keep his company afloat, and also trying to win the Mila. I cannot pronounce it. Mila whatever.
Mila
Emilia, whatever. But he just
Emilia
gives,
Bedelia.
besides like the Italian accent, which again is so throughout, like similar to House of Gucci, this subtle yet powerful role with this larger than life character and icon, yet being able to humanize him is what really comes out in this movie. And I think that's where we're drawn to. And I think the movie as a whole is good. I think the dialogue is good for the most part. And yes, there's some other roles that I didn't particularly like or performances, but Driver is the driving force behind this, right?
Mhm.
Pun intended that time. Like, he really is handling a lot while he's trying, like, you know what I mean? Like, he is literally a tour de force in this movie, I think.
He does amazing stuff with the dialogue here. He has his moments, him with the team talking about like risking death in order to win, right? And then you see the personal dynamics, the one-on-ones between him and his wife. I thought were amazing sequences, particularly like his moments with Penelope Cruz. Like that's like high level acting that we're seeing. But he's doing like a lot of small stuff that also tells me who he is as a character, where you don't need a ton of flashbacks. Although there is a great flashback montage during the Italian opera scene, what he's doing, it's like where he has De Portaga, like the new driver from Spain coming over, and he brings his wife, and she's an actress and a big movie star. And so what he does, it almost gave me like a Jerry Jones type of vibe, where it's like, don't bring her. And then he does see her, and what does he say? He's make sure you get pictures of my car. And then not only has he puts himself sandwiched between the couple, but he grabs the girl like basically by the ass and then pulls him close to her to show like a power, like he is in charge. And
In
it
the
shows
Ferrari
him
logo.
as in the Ferrari logo. And he shows like he is a coach, but he's also a businessman, right? Just like Jerry Jones, like the general manager of the Cowboys, but also he understands the nature of the business, what pays the bills, right? It gave me that type of vibe. And then him earlier on sneaking out of the house to make sure he doesn't awake his basically illegitimate child. He sneaks out, and then you see him changing gears on the car, and then you don't really get much of his racing career, but watching him move right the levers in that way and how professional he looks when he does it, you're like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. He had a previous career as a racer. It's like small choices like that. It kind of builds in. You kind of eliminate that buildup of his career, showing his failures as a professional driver, and instead saying this guy knows what he's talking about. It's like small stuff like that I thought was like really effective.
Yeah, the details I think Michael Mann does here is why, like, I love Michael Mann, But I also just want to get back to Driver, where like this needed a big time movie star to
Yeah.
play this role, because obviously the personality, the celebrity, the public figure Enzo Ferrari is. So that's why like Hugh Jackman was rumored to be in this role. I could see that as in like, oh, but I think from an acting standpoint, just being able to handle everything, the Enzo legacy, losing an heir, right? The grief with that, to battle Penelope Cruz, who we'll get to, right? Someone that could act on the chops with her, right? And then just being like basically a Jesus figure, a lot that was kind of hinted throughout this movie, right? And I think you needed an Adam Driver type of performance. And that's why like Christian Bale was like the immediate guy that they went to. I could have seen that as well. But I think it makes sense why like we have Adam Driver here and why Michael Mann picked him and now is like kind of like saying like he's like his guy going forward. And I kind of love that. So again, like I think this is a very good movie overall. But I think the performance here was just so difficult and is I think very impressive from Driver. One of the best of the year, which unfortunately I don't think is going to be recognized at the Oscars, but he should be nominated for an Oscar for this.
Yeah, he held the screen very well, and he was not the casting that I was troubled by. You know, he is an American playing an Italian symbol of pride. So it's like, does that necessarily work? Is the accent working? But it's the physical performance, how big he is on screen and how dominant he feels, right? And how what he says goes. Like I bought every second of it. And I think we should get to the other castings here. We should talk about Penelope Cruz, a Spanish actress playing the Italian wife of Enzo Ferrari. She was by far the second, like she was arguably right there with Driver as the best performer of the movie, at least in my eyes. Someone that you could tell is a lot more emotional than an Enzo Ferrari, someone that has taken a toll emotionally following the death of their son, and but is someone that it's a very unique relationship because they need each other. She is the accountant for Ferrari. You know, I kept on because we just watched Maestro and I was looking at the dynamics of like a marriage and their relationship, how unique it is. Like this one, obviously very different, but also it's not your average marriage where they have an open relationship. Enzo Ferrari can sleep with whoever he wants. His wife's not divorcing him. They live under the same roof. You have Enzo's mother living with them. It just created some really interesting dynamics. And it was interesting to see what is that line that's going to really push Penelope Cruz's Laura out of Enzo's life. Like, what is that line that's going to come? And eventually we hit it going to the third act without going into any spoilers. But I thought she was incredible. Just so angry and a very sad character at the same time. And Penelope Cruz, they add like some bags under her eyes, so the stress that she's gone through. I wasn't bothered by her being a Spanish actress cast in this Italian role, but it's just strange that the top three billed actors, none of them are Italian. That just was crazy because the external factors, the supporting characters aside from them, it just all seemed very Italian. It seemed like it was a win for the Italians, but like the main core of this movie was not Italian. But Driver and Penelope Cruz, I was totally fine with them.
Even the race car drivers weren't Italian. As an accuracy, that's right. But it's
Yeah,
just like a lot of the movie, like stars, like Patrick Dempsey's in this movie.
right.
Like it's just a lot of the stars in this movie aren't Italian, even though it's definitely an Italian movie. Um, but I think also something that's interesting here is that Adam Driver. What do we think about like are his best qualities as an actor? Is when he gets angry. Think of Marriage Story. Like that's what we think of.
I got Marriage Story vibes watching these two fight.
Yeah, I
Points.
did as well. But like also Enzo, he obviously angry at times here, but he's kind of the calm, cool collective versus a Penelope Cruz in this, which I thought was so interesting. And I think Penelope Cruz was great in this too. And I think because I think Best Supporting Actress is probably the weakest acting category out of the four at the Oscars this year. I could see her slipping in, or higher chance of her slipping into a nominee again, Oscar darling, versus Adam Driver because
Oh,
how
she'll get
deep.
nominated. I think
You
she's
think she
almost a
will?
lock.
I think she can because like the weight of this role, right? Like dealing with her husband's detachment and those issues, dealing with like oh not only that but also husband has a separate life that she didn't even know about and everyone else knew about. She's also dealing with the business. She has the cards in her hands. I think there's a lot of substance to this role, which I think the Academy will see, and also I liked seeing as well on screen, mixed with the counterbalance to Driver and the Enzo Ferrari character. So, and then also the dealing with grief, which I didn't even mention, and also against the anger towards Driver and Enzo Ferrari. So I think there's a lot of substance to this character, and I could totally see her getting nominated for an award here.
Yeah, I think I was kind of smart for like a Spanish actress who's known for wearing her emotion on her sleeves to play this type of role. Someone who was literally made to look uglier for this role because of the stress of losing a son, All right. The stress of the relationship with her and her husband, and him constantly sleeping with other women, him constantly breaking rules of their marriage, their agreement, and then she still has to run the business alongside of him. That there is a lot going on with that character. Looks like you're about to say
And,
something.
and I think something that might have been lost in the movie, because like you don't want to be too expositionary, but like at the time, Italy had like incredibly strict divorce rules, like basically prevent like you were not allowed to get divorced, basically.
Ooh.
So like throughout the movie, I was like, why don't they just like split up or anything, throughout the movie? But it made sense where like you literally couldn't. So like they really had to make deals like this, and I think it really worked. And that's why like it wasn't until 1978, 21 years after this movie, where she died, and then basically the illegitimate heir could take the name Ferrari, and they
Right.
could officially not get divorced, but that marriage could end. It was based on death. I think that's crazy, and I think this movie, didn't really mention that, but it also helped with like, oh, they can't get divorced, so they have to like make deals, and that really helped with both the chemistry and relationship throughout the movie build.
Um, I think we should use this opportunity to also transition to the other core performance here, and the casting that I questioned, and I still to this moment don't understand it. Having the Galway girl, Shailene Woodley, playing the mistress. I think Michael Mann doesn't like to use the word mistress, but like the mother of the alternate family for Enzo Ferrari. She is an Italian that slips out of the accent. I want to say halfway through the movie and kind of abandons it. And I don't think she was terrible in terms of her going one on one and having conversations with Adam Driver. I think she kind of holds her own in those scenes, but I just can't get my mind off the fact that she is extremely Irish looking, trying to speak Italian, right? And in a heavy dialogue type of role. So I think to me, I was thrown off by it. I thought the casting did not work at all.
Yeah, this is a miss, swing and a miss. It's like again, like anytime you have to go one on one with Adam Driver, one of the best actors working today, for a lot of the movie, it's asking a lot of you, and I just don't think she has the chops. I just don't. We're thinking Divergent. Like I don't know. I just don't think she was ready for this. And again, like you could definitely tell that there was some parts that you liked, but for the most part, it was a swing and a miss. And I didn't do any backstory on like how she was cast or anything, but it is odd. It was an odd choice compared to like Penelope Cruz. You can understand, like you were saying, based on her work experience and the Spanish kind of transition over to the Italian side and the fiery side. You could definitely see here. It's like I really don't get this casting. I really don't.
I I'm confused because those two other castings were the integral ones, and it's okay if you go off book a little bit and off character type, and you have an American actor, then a Spanish actress. But that one, the Shailene Woodley part, seems like you could have done someone that was Italian, right? There must have been a better fit. I don't see, maybe there is an infatuation with Michael Mann and Shailene Woodley. I don't know necessarily, but I don't think she's a bad actress, right? I just don't think this part was made for her. And she kind of is in a weird spot with her career too. Like this is her second movie, I think, of the year. She did the GameStop movie, right? Dumb Money. She was the wife of Paul Dano. Thought she was okay in that movie too. But I think she kind of is looking to find her place right now and where her career should be headed. And I think it was impossible to say no to a Michael Mann movie. Who knows how many more Michael Mann movies we're going to get? And you're going in a mistress of Enzo Ferrari type of role. Like that's juicy. Like you would never say no. I just think that this is kind of on Mann that made this decision. Um, Moving on, I want to talk about these racing sequences because, like we said before, there is some outcry regarding like the car crashes that have happened, and there's a famous press tour moment where the person, I think it was an Italian critic or a foreign critic, basically asked Adam Driver why these scenes suck, like with the race
Yeah.
car sequences. I personally didn't think the race car sequences were bad. I thought the crashes were a little bit over the top and cartoonish. And the opening scene that's in black and white, I think didn't work at all. So that's just like my broad overview. What were your thoughts on the racing sequences here?
Okay, I'm glad you said that because I wanted to start off by the beginning part of this movie, which was the black and white Enzo Ferrari racing scene, like years before 57. I didn't like it. I didn't like that scene. I didn't get any gusto from it. didn't get me excited for this movie, and also the music in the background wasn't working for me either. It was just like a nice, easy going type of music. Didn't work. Um, and the crashes, the CGI was just terrible. And for a movie that's all about being dangerous, right? You're racing like you get in one of my cars, you race like you basically racing, and you're signing your death certificate sometimes, right? So why not get a little bit more practical with the racing scenes and the crashes? I was a little surprised, like when the guys flying across the racetrack, like we went that cartoonish versus let's get a little bit more practical, or let's not even show them in Ford versus Ferrari with those crash scenes. We didn't really show those, right? But you still had that sense, you still felt it. We could have definitely changed it up here. Um, but besides that, I did turn it more positive with the racing scenes as they're going through the big race at the end. I think the scenery was interesting. You could feel the tension throughout, and like the Italian scenery, I did like, and it was very beautiful to look at. But just the crashes, which again, that's going to be the part that you kind of pull when you're walking out of the theater. Remember, I think those kind of missed the mark.
Yeah, like obviously you wanted to have car crashes that show kind of like show like, hey, we're racing to win. We'll do whatever it takes to win. We understand, right? This is a dangerous sport. That I think there is a line from Driver where he's like coaching up, right, in the room, right, where he's like two cars can't occupy the same space. He's holding his hands out, but it's like our terrible joy, our terrible passion is driving these cars, like how deadly it can be. Like you had to have those type of scenes where there are those major car crashes, but it to me it was the guy flying out, and it's almost like a unintentional comedic moment in the first part of this movie where the guy De Portaga is coming up to him saying he won the Tour de France and that he wants to race for Ferrari. He says we don't have enough drivers, and then the guy does one more lap and then flies out of the car. To me, it was like that's kind of in poor taste. Like the guy just literally flew out of a car and died. And I remember laughing in that scene, and I'm like, I should not be laughing right now. That is something awful that just happened. And then the other big car crash sequence in the third act, like also displays how this is a terribly dangerous sport for spectators as well. And it felt like a horror movie type of vibe. And like to me, it was. I looked at you at the end when we walked out. I said, "How did we not develop seatbelts after the first crash? Like how are these not a thing?" But it was just like a little over the top with how high these guys are flying. It probably matches with the physics, but the car rolling and then trucking these people, I'm like, God damn! Like this is a
And
little bit too much.
yeah, that was a little bit much because like the whole movie, it's like kind of like the Deep Portago character is like the third or fourth bit like most important character, and he's only in there to kind of say, "Hey, this is a dangerous sport. You're putting your life on the line," and it's relating back to Enzo Ferrari, he who keeps saying that repeatedly, how his two friends died this week, um, who died from racing, right? And I just think like with the people like spectators dying in the end, like I feel like the movie afterwards, like oh, I guess we were building towards that, but like we didn't really have any resemblance of that. And I think for a movie where it has post credits or whatever after the movie where it shows like, oh, this is what happens to Ferrari. Like, I think something that wasn't mentioned, which is huge, is that this race was immediately banned by the government.
Yeah.
This race was banned for 20 years, right? And they came back in '77, just like insane. I think that like, you didn't even mention that. So that was like distasteful. I think was that crash, and then like not even mentioning that. It felt kind of odd where the movie kind of weighed on that towards the end of the movie.
Yeah. I think that might have been an important detail to
Yeah,
include there.
five children died, 9 people in total.
Yeah. And after that, it doesn't end like this is where it's like not Ford versus Ferrari. First of all, it's like not a focus on you don't have a superstar actor in the cars here. It's more about the guy outside of it. And it's not like a Hollywood type of ending, right? In terms of like how the race ends. Like, yes, we win, but there is tragedy and like the company is still not saved. And there is a national crisis that happens afterwards. And it does come down to the relationship between uh Laura and Enzo to kind of save the company. So I thought it doesn't go the traditional route, I think, for like a sports racing type of movie, which is something I would expect Michael Mann to do. Uh, Other thoughts here, strengths or flaws? What do you got?
Yeah, I'll just also mention like historically speaking, it is odd how like we had Ford versus Ferrari a few years ago, right? 2019. So like we kind of know like I think that this is kind of like a drawback when I'm watching it because I know it's not true. Like obviously this is implying this, but when he's on the phone with Fiat and like basically it implies that like oh they're gonna sort out the financials, the capital raising with Fiat, and their financial woes for Ferrari is gonna like just be okay, we're good to go here, clean his hands. But it was over a decade later that he actually sold to Fiat, 50% share of his company. So like Ford versus Ferrari coming before this also had some implications for me where I'm
Mm.
kind of putting together aspects of this movie with that movie and just historically speaking what's going on because I think in this movie they're trying to say oh like Ferrari wins at the end he's gonna like wipe out his debts but it really was another 10 years of mounting debts and growing expensing of like this racing of the racing that's affecting this company and I think that for me like subtly was like an indicator for me throughout this movie.
I think it was a good decision to include it though, despite its inaccuracy, because it just adds to the stakes. This movie felt
Yeah.
like it had high stakes. Like I felt like Ferrari was definitely on the line at this point, and that's why it was like important that we captured these several months, even if you have to cheat a little bit, like Michael Mann did with that type of storyline. I'm okay with it 100%. Um, Awards consideration, we talked about Penelope Cruz as a contender, Adam Driver potentially in a 5 spot here if we see him kind of I don't know if he's going to be campaigning that hard. I haven't really seen him. I haven't seen him doing many press tours aside from promoting the movie. Um, so I think Penelope Cruz is definitely the one here. I don't think it's going to get a best picture because of the backlash on some of the things that we talked about. The people of Italy are receiving the movie, right, with now a lot of Italians at the core of it. I think we should get to scores here. Ricky Flex, what do you give Ferrari?
I gave this an 84.
Okay, I'm at 86. We're very similar today, Ricky Flicks. All right, a second movie that it's in the positive. It's in the green for the Drive-In podcast.